The bar erupted into chaos as Vince Keller's hulking frame slammed onto the table, glass shattering beneath him. Ethan Walker, his hand steady and his expression calm, held the man's arm twisted behind his back with a precision honed by years of military training. The room was frozen in shock. Some patrons gasped, while others exchanged wide-eyed glances. Vince's gang stood paralyzed, their bravado crumbling in the face of Ethan's unshakable composure. "Let him go," one of them stammered, but Ethan's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "He started this." Just then, the sound of police sirens pierced the tense silence, the flash of red and blue lights painting the walls. What began as a quiet night for Ethan had spiraled into a confrontation that would change more than one life forever. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more gripping tales. Ethan pushed the door open, the warmth of the bar washing over him as the familiar hum of an old jukebox greeted his ears. The place wasn't much, just a roadside pit stop for locals and truckers, with faded posters on the walls and a mismatched assortment of bar stools. Ethan nodded at a bartender, a young black man with a friendly smile, and found a seat in a corner booth, his camouflage jacket folded beside him. He ordered coffee, not trusting himself with alcohol yet. Deployment had been rough. He needed clarity, not clouded judgment. Moments later, the door banged open and 5 men stormed in. Leather jackets covered in faded patches and worn jeans gave them a rough, imposing air. At the center of the group was Vince Keller, a hulking man with pale skin and a sneer permanently etched onto his face. His icy blue eyes scanned the room like a predator searching for prey. When they landed on Ethan, his lips twisted into a cruel smile. "Hey, look at this." Vince's voice boomed, loud enough for the entire bar to hear. "A hero in our midst, or maybe you're just playing dress-up, soldier boy." Ethan looked up, his expression calm but wary. Vince strolled toward him, his gang close behind. "Where'd you get that jacket? Army surplus? Or did you steal it off someone who actually served?" "I earned it," Ethan said evenly, keeping his voice steady. "Oh, you earned it, huh?" Vince leaned closer, his breath reeking of beer. "What unit were you in? Or is this just part of some street corner hustle?" Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Vince wasn't looking for answers. He was looking for a fight. "Come on, boy." Vince spat, his voice dripping with venom. "Bet they didn't even let you in the real army, did they? Can't trust your kind. Probably got discharged for, what, stealing? Laziness?" The room grew silent, the air heavy with tension. Ethan's fingers flexed on the table, but he stayed still. He had faced far worse than this. But Vince wasn't done. He slammed his hands on the table, leaning in close. "You know, my daddy always said, 'That's enough.'" The bartender's voice cut through the tension. His name tag read Marcus, and his dark eyes flashed with anger. "This ain't that kind of place, Vince. Leave the man alone." "Stay out of this, Marcus," Vince snapped. "This is between me and him." Marcus didn't budge, and neither did Ethan. "Walk away," Ethan said quietly, his voice calm but firm. "You don't want to do this." But Vince wanted exactly that. He grabbed Ethan's jacket, yanking him halfway out of the booth. The moment his hand made contact, Ethan moved. Years of training took over. He twisted Vince's arm behind his back and slammed him against the table, glass shattering on impact. Gasps filled the bar as Vince let out a strangled cry. "Let him go!" one of Vince's men shouted, but they didn't move. They knew better than to take on someone with Ethan's skill and composure. Vince struggled, his face red with humiliation. "You're gonna regret this." He spat. "I'm calling the cops." One of his lackeys pulled out a phone, dialing 911 with shaky fingers. Minutes later, the flash of red and blue lights painted the bar's walls. 2 officers entered, a burly man with a buzz cut and a sharp-eyed woman who immediately took in the tense scene. "What's going on here?" the male officer asked, his voice calm but commanding. Vince pointed at Ethan. "That guy attacked me. He's pretending to be a soldier." The officers turned to Ethan, who was standing calmly, his hands at his sides. "Sir?" the female officer said. Do you have any ID? Ethan nodded and reached into his jacket, pulling out his military ID and a small medal case. The officer examined them carefully before exchanging a glance with her partner. He's legit, she said quietly. The bartender stepped forward. Vince started this. He was harassing the guy, making racist comments. We all heard it. Several patrons murmured in agreement. One older woman at the bar added, He's been running his mouth since he walked in. That soldier didn't do anything wrong. The officers turned to Vince. Witnesses are saying you instigated this, the male officer said. You're lucky he's not pressing charges. Get your group and leave. Vince's face burned with rage, but he had no choice. As he stormed out, he locked eyes with Ethan one last time. Behind him, Mike Turner, one of his gang members, lingered for a moment. His gaze met Ethan's, and for the briefest second, Ethan saw something in Mike's eyes. Regret, shame, maybe even fear. Then Mike turned and followed Vince out the door. 2 days later, the sharp ring of a doorbell pulled Ethan from his thoughts. He wiped his hands on a rag and walked to the door. Standing on the porch was Mike, his leather jacket replaced by a plain hoodie. He looked different, smaller, almost fragile. Mike, right? Ethan said, his voice neutral. Mike nodded, his hands stuffed deep in his pockets. Yeah, look, I don't want to take up your time, but I wanted to say I'm sorry, for the bar, for not stopping Vince. Ethan studied him for a moment. Why now? Mike hesitated, his shoulders slumping. Because it hit me. What we did. My mom, she's black. My dad's white. Growing up, we couldn't stay in one place for long. People didn't want us there. And even though I look white, I was still that kid with the black mom. I got bullied, shunned. I dropped out of school because I couldn't take it anymore. That's how I ended up with Vince's crew. They don't care about my past. Or so I thought. Ethan's expression softened, but he didn't speak, letting Mike continue. When Vince started with you, I saw my mom, the way people treated her, and I did nothing. Mike's voice broke. I'm tired of doing nothing. I want to be better. Ethan crossed his arms, studying the man in front of him. What do you want from me? Nothing, Mike said quickly. Just to apologize. And maybe to hear you say it's not too late for me to change. Ethan was silent for a long moment before nodding. It's not too late, but change doesn't happen overnight. It's a choice you have to make every day. Mike's eyes glistened. Thank you. That means a lot. As Mike turned to leave, Ethan called after him. Mike, next time you see something wrong, don't just stand there. Mike nodded, a faint smile breaking through his guilt. I won't. Ethan watched him go, feeling a strange mix of emotions. The road to change was long, but Mike had taken the first step. And for Ethan, that was enough. Sometimes the hardest battles weren't fought on foreign soil, but in the quiet moments of life, where hearts and minds were tested. What do you think of Mike's decision to apologize? Would you have forgiven him if you were in Ethan's place? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful tales.